Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. Is J.P. Morgan still manipulating silver and gold prices? Let's explore. That is the question of this video, indeed, to find out if that is still happening. There's a reason for that, and if we go back in time, you will know that I've covered on this channel the precious metals manipulation that J.P. Morgan has been engaged in, but usually those stories revolve around a time period in between 2008 or 7 to about 2016. That is where a lot of the charges are, and that is where J.P. Morgan has agreed to pay up to $920+ million to settle charges as a penalty for that. Of course, we all know exactly what that means in terms of their overall bottom line. That's really not a lot of money to settle those charges, and really, we have not heard about any jail time associated with the manipulation of silver and gold prices and other precious metals by J.P. Morgan. So the question is are they still doing it? Could they get away with it? Well, in theory, yes, they could. As shared with me by one Zephiel, this press release from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission that talks about this recently just posted just within a day. This talks about some record keeping and how J.P. Morgan is admitting to these failures in keeping records and agrees to pay $125 million in penalty. So this is a press release that was released by the Securities and Exchange Commission, but we're going to actually reference an article here from Reuters that is going to have a very common theme that is pretty profound in times when I've covered J.P. Morgan and their manipulation. But before we begin, two things. Number one, if you enjoy stories like this, I find them on my own, and also you, members of the community, share them with me, which I really appreciate for sure. But stay tuned to the channel. I hope you will thumb up the video and subscribe, or stay subscribed, as I like to cover this news as it comes through. And number two, just a point of clarification, because undoubtedly people misinterpret my position on manipulation. And so I want to be very clear about it, because I like to cover things in the news, even if they go against what I believe. Now, I do believe there's manipulation, really always have, to a point. In other words, I believe that every commodity is manipulated, and I think it's wrong, and I believe it should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I also believe that jail time should take place for those who engage in it. With that being said, the manipulation occurs mostly and undoubtedly from within organizations, from within financial institutions for all commodities, and really for pretty much any kind of trading asset out there. You will find that there is manipulation going on, and whether it's legal or illegal or skirting the lines of both, J.P. Morgan has been caught doing illegal trading called spoofing, high-frequency trades, in order to move the price of gold and silver up or down for personal gain for those engaged in the practice. That's undoubtedly happening. But the thing is, the bottom line, it is done for selfish reasons. Whereas most in this community believe there is precious metals suppression, which is a wholly different thing, and they feel that that is done between institutions as a cabal, as a conspiracy to keep the prices of gold and silver down. I have just not seen any evidence on that, so I typically don't believe it unless there's irrefutable and undeniable and clear, simple evidence that shows that that's occurring. But again, I want to keep an open mind about that. But that is a very different thing. Price suppression and price manipulation are very different things. So I wanted to get that out of the way, and to still ask the question here in this video: is J.P. Morgan still manipulating silver and gold prices? and they could be based off of this report. Now, the Securities and Exchange Commission mentions here a $125 million penalty. Reuters says that they agree to pay $200 million penalty to settle U.S. regulatory charges on record-keeping lapses. So let's look through this here. U.S. regulators fined J.P. Morgan Securities $200 million for widespread failures to preserve staff communications on personal mobile devices, messaging apps, and emails, and are probing similar lapses at other financial institutions, they said on Friday. So it could be that other financial institutions are doing it, and who knows what the motivation could be, but one of those motivations could be precious metals or manipulation of any kind of assets or what have you, among other things. And that is interesting. But anyways, JP Morgan and Chase, broker-dealer subsidiary, admitted to the charges to violating securities laws. It also agreed to implement robust improvements to compliance policies in addition to a fine, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission said in its $125 million order. So there you go. That's where they get the $200 million from. And the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission said on Friday it has fined the firm $75 million for the same issues. The firm's actions meaningfully impacted the SEC's ability to investigate potential violations of the federal securities laws, the SEC said. And here is the common thing on all of these stories that you've seen on my channel talking about JP Morgan. This statement right here. It's in every single story. You go back and look through, search JP Morgan manipulation in all the stories. This is the common sentence that is in every single story. JP Morgan declined to comment. Go figure. The penalty is one of the first major enforcement actions brought under SEC Chair Gary Gensler, who was appointed by Democratic President Joe Biden and who has pledged to crack down on misconduct by Wall Street companies. The SEC said it's discovered that JP Morgan Securities had been violating rules that require firms to preserve written business communications when the broker was unable to produce records during the course of other investigations. As a result of the JP Morgan probe, the SEC has opened investigations into other firms' record-keeping practices, it said, confirming an October Reuters report that was going to be going on. And this is an issue we're seeing at other firms, said SEC official, adding that individuals and entities that self-report will fare better in penalty negotiations. And then this talks about from at least January 2018 through November 2020, JP Morgan security employees often communicated about securities businesses matters on their personal devices, using text messages, WhatsApp, and personal email accounts, the SEC said. So none of those records were preserved. The lapses were institution-wide and known to senior management, who also used personal devices to discuss business matters, the SEC said. So, that's a problem if it's breaking the law, and, they should do this thing through official communications. Now, that does not necessarily mean that we should say, hey, well, that's automatic that they're manipulating precious metal, silver, and gold prices, but they could use those personal communication avenues in order to plan or to conspire to manipulate precious metal prices, among other activity that may be considered shady or unethical or maybe even illegal. So that means that it's quite a possibility. Now, there's a lot that would have to draw from that in order to get there, but the U.S. largest bank, JP Morgan, very well could have the avenue, and that could open up the potential for motivation to manipulate precious metal prices. With that being said, I think it's quite ironic here that this was from a commissioner here appointed by President Joe Biden, who good friend Hillary Clinton did the same thing while she was Secretary of State by using a private email server for records and the like. And to my knowledge, there is no fine that Hillary Clinton has to pay for hiding emails and doing personal correspondence under the Secretary of State. So that irony should not go unchecked here. Very interesting indeed. The article continues. It added that J.P. Morgan Securities agreed to retain a compliance consultant and to conduct a comprehensive review of its policies and procedures related to the retention of electronic communications found on personal devices, among other remedies. So we'll see. Now, that's J.P. Morgan Securities. If this compliance consultant, depending on that relationship, if they say, well, yeah, if you find something tawdry, that talks about gold and silver or manipulation or what have you, well, just let that go by the wayside. Let's not look at that, but let's look at something else that may skirt the line that's maybe not as serious or what have you. So they may be able to pick and choose. I don't know. It just depends on how they handle it. Not a lot of us trust some of these big banks and with some of these matters. It's understandable, but we also don't know how much influence or how much power they have. One thing we know for sure is that the manipulation of silver prices or gold prices, up or down, well, obviously it's going to hurt us on the way up, and it's going to help us on the way down. And it can only happen for so long. And these high frequency trades that they do are only evident, in the moment, and only last for so long. Natural market forces, I believe, are much more powerful, and it does tend to kind of even out in the end. But of course, I know I'm in the minority in that point of view. But nonetheless, I believe that in order to prevent any kind of manipulation, there should be crackdowns, and there should be real penalties for this type of activity. But nonetheless, it is interesting. And thanks again to Zetfael for sharing this story with me. And we'll see how this pans out, if there's anything that will come from it. But it just goes to show you J.P. Morgan in the news again for some activity that is illegal, apparently, with these record keeping. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch this video, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.